Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our session. This is our second session around construction and major renovation application overview. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us. In understanding that you all are interested in submitting an application for funds that you are going to be setting aside soon, which is going to be by July 1st of this year for any of your funds to be identified to be used for construction or major renovation. So we definitely are very glad you're able to join us today. We hope that you all find this session very helpful. We do have a chat box that is available here in Zoom. If you're not familiar with that, go ahead and find that located on the very bottom of the presentation slide. If you just move your cursor over, you should be able to find that chat box. This is an opportunity to identify who's joining us, your name and your tribe. We really appreciate that and just want to say again, welcome. Welcome to our discussion here on construction and major renovation. We realize there's probably questions as we're moving along. We will try our best to answer these questions. If for some reason we're not able to, we are capturing all these questions throughout our sessions, and we will also relay them into our office hours. So we all do hope that maybe you all could be able to join us during one of our office hours that will be taking place here this month on the, let me get the dates, the 10th, the 17th, the 24th, and the 29th. So just want to make sure everyone is aware that we do have office hours. I'll give you all a couple more seconds to get other individuals that are in the waiting room entering in. So a huge thank you for everyone for joining us. Great. All right. Again, thank you, everyone. Hello, Yate. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are located at. I will go ahead and tell you where those office hour dates are again, closer to the end of our session, as well as it'll be in the chat box, just as a reminder. Again, today's the construction major renovation session. We're focus and looking at the application pieces and the components on what it all entails. And this information is in the program instructions. So we'll go ahead and also ask maybe during this session, you want to take some notes where the program will need to get started in gathering information and preparing that completed application for sure. Just some little logistics around the Zoom. The Zoom platform is if you need technical support during the session, we ask that you post that in the chat box. You can access the chat box button on the bottom of the menu of your Zoom window. Training specialists on the call will support you in resolving the technical issues that you are having. We know many of you are home and might have others in the family using the internet. That can definitely slow down the internet connection. So it's just a tip that if stronger internet connection is needed, move closer to the router or use the Ethernet connection attached directly to your router or modem. Also, I just want to quickly point out that the feature of the Zoom will come in handy while you're watching the presentation. The first thing we wanted to let you know is that if you stay muted when you're not talking. You will be muted. You will be muted when you join. You will need to mute and unmute yourself. And the mute button is on the bottom left side of the screen. You will also see the button to toggle your video screen, and there you will see that as well. If you don't see the icon, move your cursor over the Zoom window, and that it will appear from there. We also recommend watching the event in speaker view, but if you would like to see more people in the event, you can switch over to gallery view and change views by clicking the view button in the top right portion of your Zoom screen. Next is the participant panel. The button is located at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and the participant panel, you can raise your hand, say yes or no, and other types of feedback that may be used during this session. Next is, again, the chat window. As mentioned, the chat button is located at the right of the participant button. In the chat panel, you can write comments or ask questions that will be relayed to the presenter. And myself and those here at the Tribal Center can be of assistance in helping in the chat box. If you are on the phone and you're only joining us through audio on the phone, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6 and re-mute yourself with the same number, *6. By pressing *9, it'll allow you to raise your hand and if you would like to ask a question. All right. So did everyone go ahead and change the slides? Right. Again, I think everyone has already started doing this. Again, welcome. We just like to say thank you for joining us. Put your name in the chat box if you have not done so, in the tribe and the program that you are representing. Next. I would like to give an opportunity for the regional office or maybe the OCC staff to see if they're here in the room to have an introduction or to introduce themselves. Is Lisa in the room?
Hi, Dee, can you hear me clearly? Dee, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi,
okay,
Lisa.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name's Lisa Blackman, and I am a program specialist with our Region 6 Dallas office. I'm also joined by Sarah Stafford from Region 10, and we would like to just provide greetings on behalf of our OCC Central and Regional offices. And we thank you for joining us today in the second part of the webinar series. And as Dee has mentioned, hope that you will join in the upcoming office hours to talk about this really exciting opportunity of construction and renovation and all of the exciting work and challenges that join with that. So at this time, I would like to see if Sarah would like to join me in providing greetings on behalf of our work group.
Hi, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Stafford. I am also a program specialist with the Office of Child Care here in Region 10. I'm currently joining you from the contemporary and ancestral lands of the Puyallup tribal people in Tacoma, Washington. And thank you all for joining today and spending your time with us. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, Lisa and Sarah. So good to hear your voices today. I'll introduce myself. My name is Dolores Frawa. I'm also a technical specialist for Region 6 here within the National Center for Tribes and Early Childhood Development. I'm also joined by my colleagues as well, and I'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. Char?
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here today to talk about construction and major renovation. I'm a technical assistance specialist for Region 7, 8, and filling in for 10 as well. So I see many grantees that I'm familiar with on the line, and welcome. Melody?
Kionde da, Deonde Batsan. This is Melody Redbird Post. I'm the project director as well as a TA specialist for Region 1 with the National Center on Tribal Early Childhood Development. And it's so good to see everyone here. I'm really excited to see all the names and where you're calling in from and what tribes you represent. So as we go through this session, I just encourage you to keep using the chat and enter any questions in there, and just very excited to see all of you on the line today. Back to you, Dee.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Char and Melody. Next slide. In today's session, we all would like for you as participants to understand the reviewing of the pre-planning activities that was in our session 1, some activities that should be processing to prepare and develop the construction major renovation application. Also, just to explore the components of attachment D. So we'll go through that as the attachment D is the application checklist, and that's within the program instruction. We also would like today for everyone to engage in discussion with peers to explore available construction major renovation options, to hear what those are, prepare for the submittal of their application, the full completed application for construction major renovation. Here on the slide, we have the tribal construction process flowchart, the construction major renovation application process. So if you're not familiar, we did go through in session 1 the before, which means you're deciding to set aside funds for construction and major renovation. And also definitely having contact with your program specialist to talk over what the program plans to set aside. What funds are you thinking about? And maybe even talking through what projects are you thinking? Is it construction? Is it major renovation? Even a possibility that what you have your discussion around may have already been something that you could possibly use as minor renovation. So here in today's session, we'll focus on the during and after on the flow chart here. And that provides an overview of the completed application components and those activities after you submit your application. So just giving you an opportunity to go through this whole process. We'll go ahead and help you with that and get you started on where you should begin. Next slide. We would just like to do a recap on the pre-planning steps, making sure that you review your program instruction, also printing out that attachment D. Completing the pre-application activities such as determining the need within the community, identifying internal and external partners, determining those planning costs. What is it going to cost us? That also helps identify your set aside amounts to when you are requesting that through a letter. And again, just contacting your regional office. All right. We would just like for you all to join a poll question here. We have 2 of them. Did you attend the construction and major renovation pre-planning session in May? And you can either answer yes, no, no, but would like the link to the recording. And then the next question we have is, if you attended the pre-planning session, have you determined if your project is considered a minor renovation? All right, it looks like we've got quite a few of you all that did attend our pre-planning session on May 19th. We certainly, well, we kind of see there's a little more maybe didn't attend, but still would like the recording link. We definitely will send those out in a follow-up email, as well as the second question. You're not too sure if there's a possibility that what your project is and whether it's minor renovation, you're not sure. So that's the whole reason why we would just like to really kind of just put that out there, is contacting your program specialist will really help you understand whether what your project will, you know, what it's all involved in, whether it's minor renovation or if it's major renovation, or maybe even if it's a full construction. So thank you everyone for participating in that poll. We'll now go ahead and turn this part over to my colleague, Shar.
Thanks, Dee. So now we're gonna look at the application process a little bit more in depth. And this is the during process. Again, in this row, it indicates all of the steps. So obviously, we must submit that application by July 1st of 2021. The second is to look at a partial application. If you're running out of time and you need to get something submitted, you may submit a partial application, which includes the tribal letter, consult or work with your architects, engineer, planning, planner or other consultants. So all of that work that you've done. And then the next step would be to complete that application, including the checklist and attaching all of the required documents. So you really want to try and get that full application prepared and ready for that July 1st deadline. Remember, during the development of your application, these are the recommended activities to be completed. So we also want to talk a little bit more about the Tribal Child Care Management Systems Framework. This was introduced in our pre-planning session 1, and we're providing it again just to remind you of the various parts of the framework that could help your program make decisions around construction or major renovation based on the information that you gather from your internal systems. So those small pieces of pie in the middle. Our hope is that you've gathered the preliminary information from your internal systems after our last webinar presentation. And this presentation's set of slides and recording will be available, as well as the past recording. But we'll get that information out to you. So on the screen, you're going to see a picture of the program instruction, and the program instruction states that the CCDBG Act allows tribal lead agencies to use CCDF funds for construction or major renovation of child care facilities. It's important that tribal lead agencies review that program instruction as they begin to consider a construction or major renovation project. Tribes with an approved plan under Public Law 102-477 could also request and receive ACF approval in accordance with this program instruction prior to spending any CCDF funds on construction and major renovation projects. And as you can see in the chat box, Tricia has put in the link to the program instruction. And this document will provide you essential information on the processes to set aside CCDF funds and the components of a complete application. So on the screen, now you will see a copy of Attachment D. This is a checklist summary of the application requirements. This checklist merely serves as a guide to developing your application, and it's not intended to serve as a form or a replacement for thorough narrative. So as you can see, some of the boxes are quite small. You will need to create a narrative to attach to this. We're going to go through each component in the next few slides, and you can download the checklist using the link in the chat box. We're going to pop that in there, and you can follow along and discuss each element. You may want to just take some notes as we talk about each element. That might help you move this process forward and give you some ideas on how to complete all of the components. So we're going to start going through each of the components, and the first component of the application is the contact information section, where you'll add your tribal name and the tribal lead agency. Component number 2 of the application is where you'll describe all of your existing child care facilities that are within 50 miles of the proposed facility that will be either constructed or renovated and that are currently used by tribal lead agencies for CCDF activities. This description should include the number of each type of facility, for example, the number of center-based or home-based providers, and a brief description of each center or provider. So on the screen is an example of a description for question 2. So in this example, it states the nearest facility is located 61 miles away in the community of Happy Lake and is owned and operated by the ABCD Indian Tribe. 46 children ages 6 weeks to 5 years are served in the classroom style location, within the Happy Lakes Elementary School complex. The condition of the building is quite adequate as it is newly constructed and renovated within the past 10 years. So as you can see, this is an acceptable reason. There are no existing child care facilities within 50 miles, and the applicant described the nearest facility that's located 61 miles away. Okay, moving on. In component 3, the tribal lead agency must provide an explanation of need, why the current facilities are not adequate to carry out CCD activities, and why this will inhibit the tribal lead agency's CCDF program in the future. The explanation must include the estimates of the number of children who currently receive CCDF services, are currently eligible to receive and need CCDF services, but are not being served due to inadequate facilities, are projected to receive CCDF services over the next 5 years in the absence of this proposed construction or major renovation project, and are projected to be eligible to receive and in need of CCDF services, but will not be served without this proposed construction or major renovation project due to inadequate facilities over the next 5 years. Component 4 is to describe why current facilities are not sufficient. The tribal lead agency must also provide a statement that adequate facilities are not otherwise available. For example, there's nothing you could lease, nothing for donation, nothing that you could purchase with using non-CCDF funds or other means. So we're going to take a minute to pause and see if anyone has any questions, and you can submit those by typing those into the chat box. All right. We'll keep monitoring the chat box and we'll go to the next slide. Item number 5 in the application has 3 components that focuses on the level of services before, during, and after the proposed construction and renovation project. And here on the slide, you'll see the first 2 components. Component A, it states, the CCDF final rule requires that tribal lead agencies provide a written assurance that the use of the CCDF funds for construction or major renovation will not result in the level of child care services compared to the level of services provided in the previous year. Component B says the tribal lead agencies will also have to describe how the current fiscal year's level of services compares to the previous year's level of services. Please note that the tribal lead agency may define level of services in terms of the number of children served and or the amount of funds spent on childcare. Regardless of which definition the tribal lead agency chooses, it must provide information on both the number of children served and the amount of funds spent on childcare. If you're wondering where you can get this type of information, you can always refer to your ACF 700 report for your previous year's numbers and your ACF 696T financial reporting documents to determine the amount of money you've spent on direct services. The third component in component number 5 is letter C, where the tribal lead agencies can seek a waiver from the requirement to maintain the same level of services during construction or major renovation. And this waiver can be granted if the tribal lead agency meets one of these, submits the following written assurance: the decrease in the level of child care services provided by the tribal lead agency will be temporary, or describes the current year's fiscal level of child care services the projected decrease as a result of the construction or major renovation project, and how long the tribal lead agency estimates the projected decrease will last. Also, explain how the child care services will improve after the completion of the construction or major renovation. The explanation must include a plan that shows the level of services will increase or the quality of services will improve. Please note, since the increase in CCDF tribal mandatory and discretionary funds, it might not be necessary to request a waiver. CCDF funds and supplemental funds can be used to help with the day-to-day child care services and operations. If using CARES Act or CURSA funds, your application must justify that the construction or major renovation activity is for the purpose of preventing, preparing for, and responding to COVID-19. For more information on the CARES Act and CURSA funds, please see the links in the chat box for the program instructions. Additional information will be coming to you about the ARP Act. Tribal lead agencies can use ARP Act for construction and major renovation, in addition to providing funding to child care providers, including tribally operated centers that can be used for facility maintenance or improvement. Tribal lead agencies have explicit authority under the CCDBG Act to use stabilization funds for construction or major renovation. On the screen is an example of a description for questions 5A. In this example, here the grantee has included the necessary requirements. So within the example, they included the use of CCDF funds for construction will not result in the level of child care services provided by the ABCD Tribes Child Care Assistance Program as compared to the level of services provided in the preceding fiscal years. So in the first bullet, they projected that fiscal year 2016, the grantee spent on direct services was $3,941,870, and they verified that with their ACF 700 report that they served 1,147 children. In the second bullet, you'll see their previous year, fiscal year 2015, total spent on direct services was $3,294,408. The ACF 700 report verifies children served at $1,100. So let's take a minute to pause and see if anyone has questions, and please continue to post those into the chat box. I can see that we have a few more coming through, and Lisa Blackman from the Office of Child Care is working diligently to put some answers into the chat. And if you do not get your answers, please attend the office hours. We will be doing some research on your questions and getting some guidance from the Office of Child Care.
Shar, hi, it's Lisa Blackman. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I just wanted to address the question regarding the 50-mile radius or 50-mile area. I'm encouraging everyone that has that question to please contact your regional office, because a discussion with your program specialist will be helpful in helping you to determine what area would be considered, because it will vary depending on if it's a tribally operated center. Maybe your tribe is the only tribal lead agency or entity providing childcare services. So there's a lot of factors of what can be considered within that 50-mile radius. I would also encourage you to work with your state lead agencies, if at all possible, as far as for resource and referral information, because a lot of that information is already captured and would be immediately available to you. So I just wanted to provide that as kind of a general response, but again, encourage you to reach out to your regional office And I know we have a lot of content, so I don't want to take away from that. And we'll try to provide some general responses to some questions, but then those specific questions related to the COVID relief funding, I encourage you to join the office hours so we can have a more extended discussion about that, because guidance is being developed in response to that. And so there'll be some further information available. Thanks, Shar.
Thanks, Lisa. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move forward in the next slide and look at component number 6 of the application. And that focuses on information regarding the proposed location of the facility that will be constructed or renovated. Tribal lead agencies must provide a description and map of the site for the proposed facility and an explanation of the appropriateness of the location in relation to the tribal lead agency's service area. And B, a description of the impact of the location. For example, the transportation of childcare or children to and from the program, collaboration with other childcare, Head Start or Early Head Start programs, social services programs, and health providers, and all other program activities and services that will occur on the location. So now I'm going to turn it over to Melody to take us into a quick poll question.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shar. All right, so I see we have a lot of questions in the chat, but right now we wanted to have a poll question. So our question is, does your tribe have access to available land on which to build the facility if you are doing new construction? So go ahead and take a minute. I see we have responses coming through. Give you guys a couple more seconds to make a response, and then we'll end the poll. All right, we'll go ahead and take a look at the results. It looks like the majority of you are saying yes, that you do have access to available land. That's awesome. There are a few of you that say no, and then there's a few of you that also are not sure. So that's okay. And those are, just want to check in and see where you're at with that. And again, if you have specific questions, start, making a list, as I'm sure you are. Start making a list of your questions and share those with your program specialist. You can reach out and set up a call with them individually, or you can bring those questions to the office hours. And we really encourage you, like Lisa said, reach out to your program specialist to kind of talk through some of those things, especially the things that you're not sure on. All right, thank you for participating in our poll question. So let's continue through with the application components. Okay, so the next item in the application is number 7. So this is about plans and specifications. So tribal lead agencies will have to provide plans and specifications for the proposed construction or major renovation project. And this includes architectural designs, which may be submitted in draft form. So yes, it is okay to have drafts of your architectural designs and submit the draft form. We know that once things start moving with construction projects, major renovation, the designs may change. And so you'll just need to work with your program specialist after you get those drafts submitted, what the process would be to update those drafts as you move along with your project. So draft architectural plans and specifications, and again, these are as opposed to final plans, they are acceptable if they include certain things. So there are 4 things that your draft architectural plans and designs would need to include in order for you to be able to include them in your application. So the first thing is your draft architectural design would need to show a plot plan showing the orientation and location of the building in relation to key features like parking areas, playground, and access points. The second thing that your draft architectural plans would need to include is floor plans showing the overall dimensions of the building, as well as the location, size, and purpose of the components within the building, like the rooms and hallways. The third thing to include in your draft architectural plans are drawings showing the size and appearance of all sides of the building's exterior. And fourth, you'll want to outline specifications listing a general description of materials and mechanical systems. Also, you must provide a description of what the facility will look like once your proposed construction or major renovation project is complete. And this includes information on the size and type of structure, the number and description of the rooms, the lot on which the building is located. That includes the space available for a playground and a parking lot, and the number of children the facility will serve. And if you are requesting a major renovation project, you'll want to also describe and identify the current condition of your current facility, as well as any proposed major renovations. And I know that's a lot of detail there. And again, I'm going to keep referring you back to the program instruction, and we'll just make sure we keep entering that in the chat. That way you have that link, and it is included in the resources that will follow up from this webinar. All right, so continuing with item 7 on plans and specifications. So tribal lead agencies will also need to include a description of certain aspects of the proposed facility that are relevant to the purpose, operation, and requirements for CCDF services. So these include item C, which is you'll need to describe the aspects of the building and physical premises that will ensure children's health and safety, like appropriate diaper changing areas and hand washing areas, sufficient heating, cooling, and ventilation systems, secure storage space for any hazardous materials, smoke detectors or other fire warning devices, adequate exits in case of emergency, and so on. In element D, you'll need to explain the elements of the facility that will help create a developmentally appropriate learning space. So that includes child-sized plumbing features, plumbing fixtures, low windows for the children to look out, as well as sufficient play space that is developmentally appropriate for the age of the children being served. Then E, you'll need to describe culturally significant elements, the facility's design or renovation. And this includes if you're using certain types of building materials, your landscaping around the facility, as well as your play spaces that include culturally significant elements. And just wanted to note that tribal CCDF grantees, you are encouraged to hire an architect or other expert that has experience in designing for infants, toddlers, and children. So just wanted to mention that. All right, so here on the screen, we have an example of the description for question 7D. And so I'm just going to read this example, which is the lower part. So this is what one grantee could indicate. So they say, the center will contain larger classrooms that allow children to explore the environment in safe and comfortable surroundings. Children will be provided opportunities to develop in all areas: physical, social, creative, emotional, and cognitive. Expanded opportunity use of gymnasium will allow year-round physical development, an area where we're currently lacking due to our severe winters. The cafeteria will provide an environment for children to share meals and socialize with their peers and caregivers. There is space allocated for family engagement activities to help parents in their efforts to prepare children for school readiness. So that is one example for element 7D. All right, so we wanted to pause really quick and see if there are any questions around the past couple application items. And I see we have questions in the chat, and thank you, Lisa, for replying to the questions in the chat. And hopefully you're jotting down any questions that come to mind, and you can keep those handy for your conversations with your program specialist or for the office hours. All right. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next item. And so this is application component 8. So this requires a timeline for the construction or major renovation project. This timeline should include a schedule for each major activity in the construction or major renovation project, as well as the occupancy of the facility. So on the screen, you'll see an example of a timeline that you could attach and include in your application. All right, we're going to move on to the next thing. We have another poll question for you. So kind of thinking about your project that you have in mind, how long will your project take? So thinking about that timeline here, 1 year, 18 months, 2 years, 2 or more years, or maybe you're not sure, and that's okay. You can certainly refine that, and you'll want to think about timelines as you prepare your application. Let's see, I see we have some responses coming in. We'll give everyone a few more seconds to make their selection. All right, we'll go ahead and show the results. And let's see how you responded. So it looks like the majority of you are not sure yet. And that's okay. I know that many of you, this is the first webinar that you're attending with this series. Feel free to go back and watch the recording for those of you that have requested it. And those recordings also will be available on our website. And let's see, we have, it looks like out of those who have indicated how long their project, looks like the majority of you are saying 2 years. So that's good. That's really good to know. And so it's really important to think about that timeline. And once you start working with your planning team and the individuals and your consultants who are working with you on this construction or major renovation project, you'll be able to kind of narrow down your timeline and get it ready to submit as part of your application. Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's see, we do have a question really quick from Velma. Can you go back one slide so you can take a screenshot? So let's go to slide 25 really quick. And we'll count down 3, 2, 1. Hopefully, Velma, you got a screenshot. Don't worry, the slides will be available online and we'll send them as a follow-up as well for all of you who are here in the webinar. So we'll go back to our next item. All right, so now let's talk about application component number 9. So this is all about intended use. So the intended uses of the facility that are proposed to be constructed or on which you are making major renovations. And this, you'll also need to include information about the percentage of floor space that will be used to provide direct services to children. If the facility is to be used for other purposes, if you're sharing the facility with other programs within your tribe, in addition to operating your childcare program, then the tribal CCDF grantee, you'll need to state which portion of the facility is to be used for other purposes. So we did want to make a note that the facility must be used principally to provide direct services to children. And also, if the facility is to be used for purposes in addition to operating your CCDF program, costs must be allocated in accordance with applicable cost principles. We did talk about cost allocation plans in our last webinar, so encourage you to check that out. And there's also some more details in the program instruction. So it's definitely okay to share the space with other programs within your tribe, but you'll need to make sure that the main purpose of your space is to provide childcare services. And if you do share space, you do have a cost allocation plan in place. And you'll be able to describe all of that in your application. And Appendix D helps to map that out for you. All right, so let's go to our next application item. So we're going to talk about component number 10. So this is focusing on non-CCDF sources of funding and loans for your proposed project. So tribal lead agencies will have to provide documentation of any sources of non-CCDF funds and the proposed use of those funds. This documentation should include any restrictions or conditions imposed by other funding sources. The documentation must include a cost allocation plan for any facility that's used, that's shared with other programs. Also, tribal lead agencies must provide the terms of any loan or mortgage agreement, and this includes deeds of trust or other instrument used to finance the construction or major renovation, as well as the repayment details. And just wanted to make a quick note that if you do have a loan or mortgage agreement that is helping to finance the project, in case of a default on a loan or mortgage agreement on the part of the grantee, the lender is required to notify ACF before foreclosing on the property. This includes an agreement that ACF has the right to cure the default. The lender must also agree that they will not foreclose on the property until at least 60 calendar days after ACF is notified of the default. This 60-day period will allow time for ACF to designate a replacement lead agency, which shall assume all obligations of the lead agency under the loan. If ACF chooses not to cure a default, requirements around the federal share, which is the total portion of total project costs that are paid by federal funds and any proceeds from the sale of the property applies. More information on requirements related to loans and mortgage defaults can be found in section 10 of the program instruction. All right, that's a lot of detail there. So let's go into the next application component, which is component number 11. So this includes information regarding the proposed cost of your construction or major renovation project. So this involves providing a cost estimate. So you'll want to gather, collect, and attach a copy of written documentation that shows an estimate of the total cost of the proposed construction or major renovation project. And this estimate must provide a breakdown by major cost category. And this could include things like the demolition and removal costs, site work, general construction or renovation, plumbing, heating, ventilation and air conditioning, electrical equipment, and architectural and engineering fees. And you must include a written estimate prepared by a licensed architect or engineer to support your cost estimate. And let's look at a little bit more in detail on what this includes. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, so here on the screen, you see kind of the breakdown. So your cost estimate should include two categories of costs: estimated one-time costs and estimated ongoing costs. So one-time costs include things like planning costs, labor and materials, equipment, down payment, professional fees, and the cost of site preparation, and so on. So those are one-time costs that are related to the preparation and completion of this construction or major renovation project. And then you'll need to also make sure that your cost estimate includes ongoing costs. So you'll need to make sure that you're including costs to operate the facility after it's done. So those ongoing costs include staffing costs, supplies, insurance premiums, maintenance costs, property taxes, and any other operating costs for the facility or the childcare program. And just want to make sure that when you're thinking and planning for construction or major renovation, that the tribal lead agency should carefully consider whether it will have sufficient funds to cover ongoing costs necessary to operate the facility after your construction or major renovation project is complete. And also you want to think about the impact of the project on the tribal lead agency's ability to meet its childcare service obligations. So for example, large allocation grantees must demonstrate that they have adequate resources to operate a certificate program. All grantees must demonstrate that they have adequate resources to meet quality expenditure requirements, in addition to constructing or completing a major renovation project. So that's why it's really important to think about your costs and make sure that you include that estimate of ongoing costs. So what is the cost going to look like once that facility that's renovated or being constructed, once that's completed and children are being served in there? Just want to make a note that when applying to use CCDF funds for construction or major renovation, those funds that are approved for this particular purpose cannot be used for ongoing operating costs and can only be used for one-time costs associated with your approved construction or major renovation project, or the principal and interest payments if the project is financed through a loan. However, other CCDF funds from the tribal mandatory or discretionary grant awards could be used for allowable operating costs. So you'll want to make sure you take a good look at your financials and make sure you have, once you have set aside this portion of funding for this construction or major renovation project, you want to make sure you can still provide CCDF services like you're currently doing. So you want to keep your program operating. All right, that's a lot of detail there. So let's look at an example. So here we have an example of a description for question 11. And so this grantee has provided in a small budget, including the cost estimates and projections. And so you can see here in response to question 11 or item 11, this grantee has listed out the different categories of costs. And this would be the one-time costs. And so they've kind of listed this out and provided the total cost there. And this is just a snapshot of their complete overall cost estimate. So just wanted you to see that. And all right, so to take us through, let's see, first I want to look, I saw some questions coming through the chat. And again, thank you, Lisa, for responding. Just wanted to pause and give you a chance to jot down any questions that you might have thought of for this last section. And I don't see any other questions coming in at the moment. So feel free to type your questions in the chat, jot them down for the office hours or for your conversation with your program specialist. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this back over to Shar to take us through the next part.
Thanks, Melody. I did see Thomasine just posted in the chat if they're going to get a copy of the slides. And yes, they are going to be available. And I believe you can download them on our website. Thank you, Tricia. She just popped that link into the chat box. So go team, we got you covered. So we're going to move on to the next slide and talk a little bit about the amount paid with CCDF funds. Item 12 requires a statement regarding the amount of construction or major renovation costs that will be paid for with the CCDF funds. A statement of the amount of construction or major renovation costs that will be paid will be listed separately by the federal fiscal year in which the CCDF funds will become or became available. Indicate whether the funds should be transferred from your tribal mandatory funds or your discretionary funds, or both. If a tribal lead agency chooses to use CARES and or CURSA funds, the application must justify that the construction and major renovation activity is for the purpose of preventing, preparing for, and responding to COVID-19. Just want to reiterate that. And the information should be included in the letter where they're requesting the specific funds for construction and major renovation. So that's where you put that statement, is in your letter. Remember to use the information you listed in number 11. So the information that Melody just went over, the cost estimate section, to determine the amount of discretionary and mandatory funds you'd like to request for set aside. So just a note, for a single project, a tribal lead agency may use CCDF funds for more than one fiscal year or supplemental funds, and a project that uses more than 1 year or supplemental funds may be approved in one single application. Okay, moving on to collaboration. number 13 of the checklist is on collaboration with your local Head Start and Early Head Start programs. It requires a statement of whether or not there is a Head Start or Early Head Start program in the Tribal Lead Agency service area. If there is a Head Start and Early Head Start program in the area, the applicant must describe collaboration efforts, including any partnership grants, any partnerships is around using the same facility, a cost allocation of the funds that Head Start or Early Head Start will pay for construction and minor renovation if they're going to partner with that endeavor. Okay, land ownership. Next, the application must provide a statement of who owns the land on which the facility will or is located. If the tribal CCF grantee proposes to construct or renovate a facility located on land that it does not own, the application must describe and provide a copy of the easement, right-of-way, or land lease it will obtain or has obtained to allow it undisturbed use and possession of the facility for the purposes of operating a CCDF program. The land lease or other similar interest in the underlying land must be long enough for the tribal CCDF program to receive the full value of the grant-funded improvements. The term of the lease or other arrangement should in most cases be for a period of years that is at least equal to the estimated useful life of the facility. The lease must contain certain information related to the federal interest. You're going to look at Section 8 of the program instruction for more information on federal interest. Okay. So for facility ownership, and this part is for major renovation projects only. The program instruction number 15 is for those of you who applied for major renovation in regard to facility ownership. Here, a statement indicating whether the tribal CCDF grantee owns the facility to be renovated. If the tribal lead agency does not own the facility, the application must include information about the owner, a copy of written permission from the owner allowing proposed renovation, and a copy of the lease for the facility. If the tribal lead agency does not own the facility to be renovated, the tribal lead agency must demonstrate that it has secured a lease that will assure they have access to the facility for a reasonable period of time, taking into consideration the amount of CCDF funds used to renovate the facility. In most cases, a minimum of 5 years from the date of the renovation is completed is required unless justified. The lease must contain certain information related to the federal interest. Again, look at the program instruction under Section 8, and that will give you the information that needs to be included. Okay, item number 16. The tribal lead agency is required to provide and maintain oversight and inspection during the proposed construction renovation project. Application component 16 requires written assurance regarding the competent and adequate oversight and inspection of all phases of the project at the work site to ensure that the completed work conforms to the approved plans and specifications. In addition, the tribal lead agency must provide a description of specific steps the tribal lead agency will undertake to ensure adequate oversight and inspection, including the qualifications of personnel who will be performing oversight and the inspection tasks. Application component 17. focuses on compliance with additional applicable regulations. Tribal lead agencies must provide written assurances of compliance with the requirements as applicable. You may check with your tribe's grants department or similar office for a copy of these assurances. You will want to make sure that the signed assurances are attached to your application. So you'll be looking for the all applicable licensing and code requirements, access requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, the Flood Disaster Protection Act, and the Earthquake Hazard Reduction Act. Okay. Item number 18 is the impact on the environment. Tribal lead agencies must also provide an assessment of the impact of the proposed construction or major renovation on the human environment, addressing in particular any significant change in land use, including substantial increases in the traffic in the surrounding area due to the provision of transportation services. Pursuant to the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969, Attachment B of the program instruction provides additional information on these requirements. Additionally, the tribal lead agency must provide a report showing the results of tests for the environmental hazards present in the facility, groundwater, and soil, or justification why such testing is not necessary. The report or justification is required regardless of whether or not the tribal lead agency is required to submit complete environmental assessment in accordance with NEPA, the National Environment Policy Act. Tribal lead agencies may work with other agencies such as your tribal planning department or environmental protection agency office, tribal housing, Indian health services, endangered species, or the historic preservation office for help in getting this completed. Okay. Now that we went over all of these components in the checklist, we're going to do a quick poll. And our poll question is, what are the areas in the construction and major renovation application checklist will you need the most assistance with? So would it be assessing the need for construction or major renovation, developing a construction or major renovation budget, designing the facility or purchasing a modular building, conducting that environmental impact study, coordinating and collaborating with other agencies? So I see a bunch of you are already filling it in. And it's pretty close right at the moment. Some of you are looking at developing a construction and major renovation budget. Some of you are saying the environmental impact study. Give it a few more seconds. All right, we're going to go ahead and end the poll. And most of you are looking at developing a construction or major renovation budget. So we will take that into account while we're developing our office hours sessions. Some of you are looking at designing and purchasing a modular building. Okay. Thank you for your participation in the poll. Okay. If a tribal lead agency is unable to submit all of the information required for their application prior to that July 1st deadline, a partial application will be accepted. The tribal lead agency should submit as much of the information as possible prior to the July 1st deadline. So whatever you can get accomplished on the checklist. At a minimum, the tribe must provide a written letter signed by the tribal leader that includes the following. So you're going to look at the checklist, and it would be item 1, identify the tribe and the tribal lead agency with the contact information included. And then item 12 of the checklist, where you're going to indicate the amount of CCDF funds. You should indicate the funds that should be transferred from your tribal mandatory or discretionary funds, or if it's some of both. And tribes should move quickly in completing their applications, and upon receiving ACF approval, finish the construction or major renovation projects. Any funds not liquidated within the 3-year period will revert back to the federal government. So it's really important, if you are submitting that partial application, that you don't stand still and you move forward in getting all of those other pieces accomplished. So we also wanted to give you a sample of, if you're going to include the CARES Act or CRSA funds in your set aside. Remember, we talked a little bit about that extra piece of information. So here's just a snippet of a sample letter that's requesting CARES and CRSA funds to be set aside. It includes the required information, and they are asking for setting aside $500,000 from CARES, and there's $500,500 from CRSA. They also added that when they're awarded funds from fiscal year 2023, they would like to set some additional discretionary funds to put aside to finish up that project. And also they're requesting some 21 funds. So it includes how much from each set of category, each funding award in the letter. And it also includes a statement that they do not anticipate a decrease in the child care services as a result of this construction or major renovation project. Again, that was another piece of the requirement. And it includes the contact information for the tribal leadership. And it's also signed by the leadership. And it also talks a little bit about how they are using these funds to assist in COVID-19 prevention by enhancing their entryways, adding additional classrooms to lower their group sizes, and any additional items that they're going to do to prevent infectious disease. So,
Shar, hi, it's
remember
Lisa Blackman. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I just wanted to address the concern of several that regarding the deadline for the request for set aside and the partial application. We did just want to clarify that July 1st is the request for the set aside of your funding, and that's done through a partial application. So we don't think it would be feasible to submit a completed application by July 1st. However, if you're far enough into the process, that might actually apply for some of the programs. So we kind of wanted to clarify that July 1st is the request for the set aside funding involving fiscal year 21. But what we also want to strongly encourage is that you don't let this process get the attention that it needs in order to submit a completed application. Because in the past, many tribes have set aside funding as a response to the increased level of funding that has been received without applying a lot of the pre-planning principles and information that's been provided in order to have a completed application. And also wanted to clarify that a completed application means that all of the elements have been submitted. And that is when OCC can actually begin the review and approval process. We can work with you as you develop your plan to let you know if additional information is needed, but approval cannot be given until we actually have a completed application. So we just wanted to, again, emphasize that July 1st is the submission for the set-aside request, but in considering that, you also want to begin looking at all of the elements that are required as part of a completed application. And if you have any questions related to any of this, please reach out to your regional offices.
Thank you, Lisa. Tricia, can we go back to the slide that shows the component? There you go. So I just wanted to share this slide one more time. The partial application, you have to complete item 1 and item 12 with this letter. So hopefully that helps. We'll go to slide 43. And this slide was just a quick break of any additional questions. And thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing that clarifying information. Remember to keep popping questions into the chat as we go along, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it back over to Dee.
All right. Thank you, Shar, and thank you, everyone. Your questions are great to see because it's probably helping those here in our webinar. They may have the same questions, so we really appreciate those questions as they're coming through. So now we're at a point where we're going to talk about after, and if you all remember the application process flow chart. Now that we are at the after stage, we want everyone's remembering that the application should be completed at this point. It should be ready with all its attachments and everything that would be involved in completing the application. We have the application that was submitted and that will get reviewed by the regional office and Office of Child Care, keeping in mind the time frame. They know that there is a time frame, as well as a notice of award letter that is going to be issued. If OCC does see some reviews within the application that needs some extra explanations or needed additional information, they will let you know that at this time, as well as the tribe getting that approval that will allow you all to go ahead and start your project, whether it's construction or major renovation. And then also keeping track of all your expenditures for construction, major renovation dollars, because you'll need to report that at the end of the year on your 696T report. Next slide. We just want to mention that tribal lead agencies, including those that are Public Law 102477 grantees, must send their completed application to the Office of Child Care, your regional office, to the regional program manager. And also those that are Public Law 102477 grantees need to send an additional to the Department of Bureau of Director, the Chief Division of Workforce and Development, ensuring that they get a copy of your completed application as well. Next slide. Here again, the OCC regional office will review the application. They will contact you, the grantee, the tribal lead agency grantee, for information if application is incomplete or if there's missing information, or even to talk about the response possibly. Also, the time for the review process will vary depending on the level of detail provided and other factors. So generally the review will be completed within 30 days, but if more time is needed, the regional office will definitely contact you. Next slide. Next slide. I'm sorry. This is the, sorry about that. The regional office again will notify you whether in writing whether request has been approved. So you will get notification by a written letter. Also, the notice will specify the amount that the funds have been approved for construction major renovation. Again, it's based on the tribal lease application, and also identifying that in your pre-application letter that you send on July 1st or before July 1st. ACF will transfer CCD funds to be used for construction major renovation to a separate grant award letter. And this letter will identify the separate grant number. So there will actually be a construction and major renovation grant number. It will not be the same grant number as your regular CCDF fund that you've been awarded. ACF will also send this award letter notifying the tribal lead agencies that this transfer has been done. Funds in this separate grant award letter can only be used for construction or major renovation activities, unless ACF authorizes the tribal lead agencies to use the funds for other CCDF activities. And that was mentioned in our prior slides. Just want to mention that Public Law 10247 grantees, construction or major renovation will not be transferred to a separate grant award. But again, ACF will notify the U.S. Department of Interior upon approving your 10247 grantees, construction or major renovation application. The tribe cannot use your CCDF funds for construction or major renovation, and this is for Public Law 10247, until the Department of Interior notifies the tribe that the scope of work has been modified to include the approved construction or major renovation project. Next. We just want to also mention that part of the application is the SF429. CCF funds for construction major renovation must submit this real property status report form, which again is the SF429. You'll be able to receive this. There's the cover page. It's on attachment B in the program instructions. This attachment D is called request to acquire, approve, or furnish. And you will be able to receive this through the Grant Solution online data collection system. And you will also be able to access this program instruction on SF429, which we do have a link available as well. For those of us that are going to pursue doing construction major renovation, again, must submit the SF429 cover page, which again is attachment B. You will find that in your program instruction. You will have to provide this information, the request to acquire, approve, and furnish. This document must be submitted along with the additional information that is required by the final rule and the supplemental written application whenever the grantee is seeking ACF approval to use CCF funds for construction and major renovation. So you also want to make sure you have access to the OLD system. This is a place where a lot of the SF429 information is available. And here is the link as well on the slide. Next. All right. We'll just pause and see if maybe someone is joining us through the phone, or if there's additional questions. We just ask that you provide that in the chat box. All right, next. We just like to provide another poll question here to see if, will you be prepared to send a full application by July 1st? If yes, you'll indicate that. If no, but we'll send a partial application, or you're not sure at this moment. The second question we ask is, if sending a partial application, when do you plan on sending your completed application? Again, just as mentioned earlier, in order to use your construction money that is being set aside, you will have to have a full application in order to use your funds that are being set aside for construction and major renovation. So if you're already sending in the letter by July 1st, and then you haven't done a completed application, then the funds will still sit there. We want to make sure you get your completed application forwarded over to your regional office to so that you could start your projects. So many of you are thinking within the 3 months, which is great, because that tells us that you all are really taking into consideration that you're planning on doing this project. And then many of you are going to go ahead and get ready to send those partial applications. All right, so again, just an opportunity to send out there is, and office hours are available. So if you are still needing information around completed application components, please the invitation is open to attend one office hours. Great. Okay, moving along. Our next question here is a poll question. And if you are interested in office hours, again, this is a great opportunity to listen to what your questions are. Maybe peers might want to hear the same question. Maybe you have a question that your peer might want to hear as well. Are you interested in attending? Awesome. Sounds like we're going to have many of you joining. We would love to have great conversations. So we will let you ask questions and we hope we can answer those as much as we can. And again, bring your questions along with attachment D, and we will help you along with that. So great to hear. Thank you everyone for participating in our poll question. So moving along next. Again, don't forget to put those questions in the chat box. We just like to provide resources here. We will go ahead and send this up as a follow-up as well. Resources that are available next. We do have the PI here. We also have policy interpretation questions around construction and major renovation. If you'd like to look at that, just click on the link on that within the slide deck that's going to be provided, as well as the 696T. If this is going to be your first time setting aside funding, it would be great to see in advance where on the 696T you will be reporting your construction major renovation and get yourself familiar with that information as well. Also, the SF 429 information. Program instruction also is part of the slide deck as well. In addition to resources we have available from our partner, Head Start, Early Head Start, where they provide financing and budgeting for early child care facilities, designing and processes, facilities file checklists, resources on safe playground, as well as tip with working with architects. Something to just take a look at to assist you and help you along. Next. We also have additional resources here, Head Start design guide, tip sheets on bidding process if you are wanting to get yourself familiar with that. Also some compliance assistance as well as accessibility standards for facilities, streets and sidewalks, or even again, the SF 429. We'd also like to just give a shout out to our physical guide that is still available. If you have not accessed that, that is also available here. If you need to get maybe some new stuff that you might have, get them a copy of this. You can upload it by clicking on the link there. Thanks. So we asked, before many of you exit our webinar, we asked that you take a few moments and click on the link here and let us know how we did on this webinar, if it was very helpful, if there's anything that we need to do to maybe enhance better, talk a little bit more about any feedback that you might have regarding the webinar. We really appreciate that. We're so welcome to get any feedback to help us improve on our presentation around construction major renovation. And we will also send this link for those that registered, so you can also participate in the feedback survey. So as we wrap up, this is also our National Center on Tribal Early Childhood Development contact information. And I will give Lisa or Sarah an opportunity to close out if they have any additional remarks around construction major renovation. I will turn this over to them to give them that opportunity.
Hi, Dee, and thank you to the National Tribal Center for the presentation. And we encourage you to join the office hours that are being provided during the month of June in preparation for the July 1st deadline for the set aside request. And also highly encourage you to also access the pre-planning webinar, the resources and information available. And as always, and it was stressed during the presentation, to please contact your regional office. They should be your primary point of contact as you plan for construction, and then also just sharing details and information with the regional office. And on behalf of our tribal work group, as well as the Office of Child Care, I thank you for joining, and I'd like to extend an opportunity for Sarah to also share comments. Okay, and Sarah added in the chat box that she had no further comments. So again, thank you all for joining us. We'll be in contact with you, and the resources and slides will be made available after today. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great day, everyone.